Hello class, welcome back. Camera difficulties. Um, Anyways, we were talking a little bit about the ellipses and planes. So you guys have your handout, definitely keep it there so you can see the perspective center line and the major and minor axis lines. Now what you're going to be doing is drawing along with me. So you want an horizon line or eye level up there as we've done with our perspective. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to draw a horizontal line. I'm going to put a plane here eventually is what this is going to be. So place a horizontal line, and through the middle of that horizontal line, I'm going to guess at its center and say it's here. I'm going to measure it in a minute. And on that center, we're going to put our vanishing point. This is a 1-point perspective situation. So there's going to be our plane. I do need us to measure this line so that we want to get it as accurate as we can to being the same on both sides. And then what you're going to do is take your ruler and you're going to connect these points. So I'm going to do that with this. So you're going to take your as we did with planes, you're going to come up with a plane. You're going to converge our lines here. These are the converging lines. And so now we've got our converging lines on there, and you should be doing the same. This is an imaginary plane, and I think I'm going to bring it back about as far as this. And so I'm going to put in a horizontal line, okay? And is that horizontal? Sorry, you guys, I've got to get in front of it to see it because from an angle, it's very hard to tell. Okay. So with that in mind now, like I talked about with the handout at the beginning, if you have a parallel plane and you put an X on it like this, as all of you know, you come up with a perfect vertical, horizontal, whatever, it's parallel. We're going to do that now in space. And so this center, which is dead center, will not be dead center of this plane. It's going to be in the perspective center. So what we have to do is go from this corner of the plane to this corner of the plane, and we're going to put an X on here. So I'm going to do this real quick. So if you get it right, it should fall down your center line. It shouldn't be to the right or the left of that center line. So now we've got our perspective center. Like the handout that you were just looking at, this center now, if you measure it to the front is a lot bigger. And that's why it's known as the perspective center line. Now, for us to draw an ellipse accurate, is what we have to do is come up with a horizontal line. So I got to get in front of it one more time, but I've got to get it right in the middle. And you want a nice line running through. To make this process faster in the future, I'm laying it out in the longhand right now, but you don't have to do it this way. All I really need is to get my horizontal line and to mark here and here, but it needs to be even. So I just need to mark that point, and I don't really need to have this whole line there. I just need to mark here and here. Those are the important points. Those are what's called the points of tangent. If we have those points, that's where our curve is going to hit within that plane. Now, is what the handout ended up showing you, and I'm just bringing this up again because a lot of people have a hard time with it. But to make a good ellipse, the curve of the ellipse is wider in the front. It's a little bit wider here than here. It hits the tangent point at the plane, but this midway point of the whole thing, the halfway point of the whole thing, this edge of the curve, when you look at it, is not touching the plane, but it stays wide. It does not angle this way. So in the handout, I do believe on the next page, I gave you one that explains all of that. So if you look at the handout, is what you're going to see is a plane drawn. Theirs is vertical. We're going to be doing one like that in a minute. They show the points of tangent. Now they're showing a dotted line where the curve ought to be. That's where this is. But how a person would just drive it a line from this point to that point and not consider the wide curve. And this goes along with the other one, okay? So is what we're going to do is I'm going to guess at my midway point on this. So I'm going to say it's about here. I'm guessing at it, and then I'm going to measure it and see if it's accurate. Okay, well, that's pretty close, so I'm going to keep it. So my halfway point of the plane is right there, okay? So you wouldn't think this is halfway when you look at it because of the illusion of the perspective that's taking place there, but that's what it is. So when we make this ellipse now, we're going to be touching this tangent point, that one. We're not touching it there, but we're going to bring our point, we're going to bring our curve real close to that line so the front of this curve becomes wide and the back of it remains narrow. So what some of us do is we take a curve and we try to get the sense for this, doing this, like I'm doing. Sometimes I like to jump from here over to here, and I like to kind of get a feel for the opposite side and bring it over. I mean, after a while, you'll get your own sense for it, but I kind of like to come around to this side and get a sense for it, even though I'm not getting a sense for it. And then do the same on this side. If it works right, the distances should work around. This is close on this side. The other side, I missed it a bit, but it's not too bad. So there's our ellipse. So is what's happening now, the front of this is wider than the back of that, so it's in perspective. That's different than making them like we just did and making them equal on the front and the back. So now we've got an ellipse in perspective. Now, is what we want to do with this. I'm going to show you another one, and you guys are, well, let's put a few of them up here. So what I'm going to do is do this. I'm going to show you a few more. And then when I'm done with it, you're going to be doing a few others. So I'm going to put a vertical line since we did a horizontal one. But you need to practice. Like I could do another horizontal one, or I could even do this. You know, so when you guys start practicing, I could put another one in here, see? And then it's going to be converging back more. So that becomes my next plane. This, so you don't get confused, I can get rid of it. And I could put a little plane in there. So when you're making these up in a few minutes on your own, you could do them above or any angle you want. Again, the same way, put your X in there and watch the corners, find your midway point, or I should say the perspective center, and then find the midway point, which would be roughly there, I would suspect. I'm going to measure it to make sure it's right about there. So, and do the same thing. So then come with your ellipse. Kind of try to feel it getting wider in the front. So kind of like that. So you got to play with these over and over. So what we'll do on this side is I'm going to converge this. And we're going to come to this one. And is what we're going to do is say that these planes are going to be about this wide. And then is what I'm going to do is put a couple of them in there like this. And I'll do that. So now we have 3 of them. I'm going to use this at our eye level as one of them. So with a series of them, you want to do the same. You want to practice this over and over and over again to get a sense for it. So a lot of the visual arts, once you understand an idea, the concept of the idea of the drawing, then you want to do it over and over and over. That's why I give you guys a lot of homework, because that repetition is what's going to ultimately get you to understand this thing and get a little more familiar with it. So you want to do that. So you want to lay them all out. This, if I wanted to do it right, rather than what I was just drawing with, I would have to converge my points, go right from the center of the X. And this time I'm going to keep it a shorthand. I'm just going to mark the plane. But it's got to go through the center of the X, okay? So it's got to go through the center of the X, or we're not going to get a good tangent point for our ellipse. Okay, so set those up. This is the last one I'm going to show you this way, and then you'll turn off, again, the tape, and I'm going to have you do several more. So that's it. When I look at this particular one, if I look at my midway point, I think it's now, see, it's a little reversed. It's a little above because it's in the reverse perspective. So now I'm looking for my halfway point. It looks like it's there. It's above my eye level, right? So it's in reverse, where before they're low, now they're high. That's this. I'm going to try to get a sense of where it might be. And it's not much lower. It's probably there. And this one, let's see what it does on a halfway point. Yeah, actually, this reads at pretty close to a halfway point for some reason. So I'm going to keep it exactly the way it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in this curve. So this has got to hit the edge. So it's going to flow around this way. It comes out and around. Keep it wide there. It's going to hit our tangent point here. Keep it wide and bring it around. I got to just kind of go around this one to kind of get the feel of it, because it's in a different perspective. And I kind of do everything more by feel than the logic. Okay, so that's not quite there. That's better. Okay. So that's better. And then this one, I'm going to place it in. And that would be that one. And then our last one. And then our last one, okay? So now we've got our three stacked up. Again, when they're in deep perspective like this, I get the sense for them better if I go from one side to the reverse side and then come up with a smooth transition in between them. They seem to be a whole lot easier to do in that way of working. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have you turn off the tape, and you're going to practice with this one more time. So see you in a minute. Anyways, welcome back. We are now going to put these together and create a shape. Okay, so far we've understand these planes, and now you know a little bit about coming up with ellipses in perspective. Now is what we're going to do. I am going to start off with a plane, maybe about here. I'll get out of your way in a second. So I'm gonna do an object, just a curved object. Let me redo this. Okay. Okay, we'll make it about that wide. And again, you're going to come up with your center line. I'm going to draw this all the way down. You'll see why in a moment. I'm going to check my edges or my sizes and make sure they work. They look good. So what we're going to do is converge our line to our vanishing point. These are our converging lines. So they're doing that. And then I'm going to make a top. I'm thinking of this as a top of a shape. So we're going to make a plane like this. So, just like what we did, we're going to repeat this. I want to try to get it a little more accurate. So is what I want to do is, I know my lines are not horizontal, but I'll do the best I can. Here, I'm going to keep them. So what we're going to do is come up with our X. So place that on. Once you have the X, exactly like we've just done, come up with your center, the tangent points on your converging lines. Mine are here. Okay. So I'm going to check this. The distances should be different. It's a plane in perspective. Therefore, the front of it's a little wider. So there's my perspective center is the high one, as all of you should know. The lower one is the center of the object, or I should say my major axis line. So now is what I'm going to do is make the ellipse. So we're going to bring it around like this. It should touch about there. And so then we get the ellipse. This ellipse is close, not perfect, but there we go. Now, is what we're going to do is, since we're going to make a shape out of it, just like what we did with a box, we're going to take our sides and we're going to bring them down. We're just going to make a little cylinder out of this. And so we're going to lower this. And let's just say it's going to be a little bit lower. Okay, and then we're going to come up with a horizontal line. We can get a decent one. I know mine are a little crooked. Okay, I'm going to check these distances and see if I'm still pretty close. They're pretty close, so I'm going to leave it. So this is a parallel plane. It's a 1-point perspective box. So then bring your angles here. That one's a little shady. So I'm going to make sure with the yardstick, you guys should be, it's nice to do these things freehand, but as what happens is you can get the line off a bit like I just did. And it doesn't work as good in the end if that's what the case. So I'm going to make it a little straighter. Okay, so there we go. That's better. So now we've got to take the corners of the back of our box, if you remember back to the boxes, and drop it vertical. So I'm taking the back corner and dropping it wherever it hits that point is the bottom of the box. You're going to do the same. Drop a vertical line, get out of your way. So it's going to be there. If all goes well, this should be a decent horizontal line. Looks pretty close. And so that's going to be the bottom of our box. Okay. So I'm just going to go through that one more time so everybody knows exactly what I did. So just like making a 1-point perspective box, we're taking the far corners of the top plane, vertical line down where it hits your converging lines. You make then the box. Okay. The same thing that we did on the top now we're doing at the bottom. Something changed about the bottom of our box that I need all of you to be aware of. Because you can do these things like we're doing here by theory and miss what's actually happening in light of, what's most important. So, is what you should notice, if something gets lower and lower from your eye level, this plane on the bottom is narrower than this top plane a little bit. So this plane actually is a little wider. Sorry, it's a reverse. As something goes down, the width is going to get bigger and bigger if all is going well. As this goes up to your eye level, it's going to decrease. So in other words, if you look at it two-dimensionally, your front line from your back line come closer together. The closer it comes to you, to the horizon line, and the further down it goes, is what will happen is the wider it becomes. So now we've got that in place. Now we've got to come up with our tangent points on our converging lines. And so we will do that. And you will do that on yours. This first one, I'm having all of you kind of draw along with me so you get the idea, because I'm going to have you do one this way horizontal, vertical, and you're going to play around with these ellipses as a form in a couple of different ways. So now we've got that in place, so we can watch our, as we talked about, our major axis line here. So that would be about there. That looks good. So it's a little in front. That's going to be the widest point of our ellipse. Not, again, it's only going to touch the plane at the so now it rounds out. So this becomes a little bigger in the front, and this should be a little narrower in the back. And as it rounds out, it becomes a little wider in the front. Okay. After a while, there's kind of a feel to it when you do it. You'll start to get a sense in your own nervous system of how to feel that out and pull it out a little more, the more that you experiment with it. This technique, fine arts, we don't have people do hundreds of these things. In auto design, if any of you are in transportation, they have you do thousands of these types of ellipses till you can freehand them like you breathe. So now is what we do is our center line is our side. So the side of an object isn't here. It's literal center of our object at our major axis line. You get to that center one there, and you drop a vertical line from the center of one to the center of the other. So it would be there. Okay. So you want to make sure you get that point right. So as what happens is, and this curve is coming out, and it gives us the illusion of the depth. So there's my little mark that I made for where the ellipse touches the plane, and the one on the bottom, they should be on a vertical alignment with each other. You got it all well, and then you got the edge of your object. Okay, so there's our little object structured out in 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective. It's not, well, I'm going to show you one in 2-point perspective in a little bit here. So anyways, is what I'm going to have you do is stop this tape again, and I'm going to have you make at least, I would say about 5 of these, okay, at various places. And feel free to make them vertical. I just did this one horizontal. Make one vertical and at various angles, and I will see you in about 10 minutes. Anyways, welcome back. If you pull out this handout, I'm going to run through a little bit of the 2-point perspective ellipse so you have an understanding of it. And again, I'm going through this stuff kind of quickly. You want to experiment with it as much as you can. So what you're going to do now, if you look at this handout, you're going to see an ellipse up here. It's going to say wrong, and the other one's going to say right. Then they got a box underneath it. This is the wrong one. This is the right one. If you look at the box, if most of you aren't that familiar with ellipses, the one that says wrong underneath doesn't feel too bad. However, the one on this side with the angle to the ellipse actually does feel better. And so what it's showing you is our axis line running through it this way is our 90-degree angle off of the vertical line running through it. So therefore, this becomes our new axis line that we're going to draw our ellipse, and that's what I'm going to show you. And again, this can get a little complicated if you've never done it before, so look at this handout as I go along, and it will help you out a lot. This is what's going to happen with a 2-point perspective situation. So what we're going to do is you got your eye level again. I'm going to put an object, say, about here, and as you know, with your 2-point perspective, we start off with a simple vertical line, and we do have a point here. So this is our central vanishing point, as we called it. And this is our left vanishing point. And this is our right vanishing point, okay? So these are our vanishing points. And what I'm going to do, I think, is keep this one a little closer, that one a little further, so there's a little different. You don't want them right in the center because of the way the lines ultimately end up, don't look as good. So what we're going to do is converge our lines just like you did last week, thinking of the boxes. So now you're going to come up with this plane that's converging. And we're going to run over here, and you should be doing this as I'm doing it so you can get the sense of it, because I'm going to have you do another one at a different angle once I'm done with this and see if you can do it. Or you can do like in the handout and just do a box and 2-point perspective and put the ellipses within them. I could do this as a box and put an ellipse in each one of them, but I'm going to do it more like if I was structuring a bottle on its side. So we're making this up, so I'm going to come up with how wide I want to make this. So I'm kind of thinking if this was a bottle, something like this, lying down like this, minus the neck, because the neck would come off the body of the bottle, so it's kind of doing this. And again, there's a lot of different ways you can imagine these things, but this I'm going to converge it back this way. So now we've got our lines, and I'm going to come up for the bottle maybe about this long, say. So I'm going to do that with it, okay? So vertical, vertical, vertical. So we got to come up and make the box transparent, but I first need the back of it. And to get the back of it, you got to converge it to vanishing point on the left. So we're doing this. And I need our inside lines. These are going to become important. This is why I needed you guys to do transparent boxes. I'm not going to make my lines real dark, but I am going to make them where you can see them. Yours in your drawing don't have to be quite as dark as this. I only really need where they cross. I need where they cross so I can drop this vertical, and so I can get them in there. I just got to straighten this out just a touch. Okay, now it's better. Okay, so now we've got our simple box and 2-point perspective. So we need an X on the front plane to come up with the perspective center. I'm going to have you do the same. Put your X on there. Mine's almost in the right spot. Okay, so now we've got our X for our center. We are going to do the same for the back of the box. We need a central line because that's what we're going to use as our major axis line. So now we've got an X on the back and the front. All of you definitely do the same. Now, if this was a bottle, there'd be a neck and perspective to it. I don't think I'm going to take the time because there's couple other things I want to show you, and time's getting by. But it would come out of here like that. But mostly I want to show you, again, with the ellipses. So with this in mind is what we're going to do is we're going to take from this vanishing point, we're going to run through the X's because that's going to give us our, if you remember back to the birdhouse, similar to that, but this is at a different angle. That was 3-point perspective, but we're running the same way through our X's. And I'm going to extend it as if there would be starting the neck of the bottle would do this. Okay, so our axis line running through. Now, with the handout, this line, off of this line, we have to come up with a 90-degree angle. Mine looks like it's at the corner of this box. Close, very close. It's a little bit off. So what you got to do is off this line through the X's, you've got to lay a ruler up there and come up with a 90-degree angle off of that. Mine tilts about like this, okay? So this becomes a point of tangent way over here and way over here. I'm going to mark them a little darker. So I got to get my other points of tangent off of this vanishing point. It's going to be here because you know how you got it on the planes. So this is my new point of tangent. That's a 90-degree angle to the center line, okay? So when you make the ellipse in there, now, and it feels right to do it this way. It'll go this way. It has this feel of the slant of the box. And it would go in there like that, okay? So now the perspective of this ellipse works to the perspective of the box, okay? Now I'm going to do the same off the one in the back. So this is my 90-degree angle. Wait a minute, I want to get it a little better. There it is. And then I've got to come up with my tangent points here and here. And now into that, I will place that ellipse. So it would go like that. So then these eventually will touch, and these will touch. Like that. And that will become your object. Okay. So those are our, this one still looks a little, I didn't get the curve exactly right, so it kind of threw me off there. Okay, that's better. So it's got a very long curve to it. It would stop about here if I had it right. It would be just like that. Okay. So that's our 90-degree angles. If you were doing tires on a car, it would be exactly the same way. This would be the axle coming through. This would be this way. The one back here would be this way. Then we'd go after the next ones. But they would have that, they'd have that angle running through it and then the width of it going in the other direction, like what's taking place there. Okay? So, is what you're going to do is turn this off. And you're going to experiment with another one in a different angle. Okay, welcome back. Is what I'm going to show you is if you were to draw a bottle, how to go about drawing a bottle. Okay, this will probably take me about 10 minutes. Follow with me carefully. So as what we do is we've already talked about in this class about notional space. You know what it is. It's the width to the height. So I would have to take the width of this bottle, like measuring it, and I'd have to measure it to the height, and it goes once, twice, 3, 4 times. So my width to the height is 4 times. Some bottles are equal, like this one. Sometimes they could be on, 3.5 or whatever, but you got to find out what it is. So say if I take the width of this bottle and do it like this, and I'm going to guess at the height, and then I'm going to measure that into it. So I'm going to drop a vertical. This might be pretty big. But I need it to be big because things in it get small and you need to be able to see them. So anyways, now is what I'm going to do is measure and say this distance, and I go on there 4 times. So here's once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Okay, so if you're measuring a bottle, and I know some of you have bottles, I've seen them in some of your still lives already that you've done, this is the way I'm going to have you do it. It's a wonderful way to work these out, and you'll be able to get things very accurate. So I think that's close. So now we've got our notional space to the bottle. Okay. Now, shapes that can be used in bottles that you're going to notice is, in this bottle, the shoulders, there's a curve to it. There's a curve in here, but it's like a half of a ball. When I measure it, if I took the top of this and measured down, the bottom of the ball would be there, which when I've measured this would be here. Okay, so because when I take my 4 measurements and come up once, twice gets me to the middle, that would be once, twice gets me to the middle. So to get that curve in this bottle, here's what you do, because it's falling in the middle of that line. We already know how to get to the middle of these boxes, right? So we do this with it. So if I do that and come across like this and this, that's where the ball is going to go in there. So now my new box, if you follow me, is here to here. So this distance in the middle is the same as a box, like there, okay? So I'm going to make it just a little darker so you guys can see it, and I'm going to edit this out. But that's how you find the middle. And this is it here. Okay, so this is where that ball is going to go. Now, is what you're going to find in bottles is if there's a curve you can reduce it to, if it touches the edge even a little bit, you can use it. So we can use circles. You can use rectangles, because you're going to certainly see them in there. You can use, like the neck of this is actually wider at the bottom than the top. So you can certainly use triangles, and sometimes they're going to get narrower and then go to wide, and sometimes they're going to do this in bottles. And these things are just going to gracefully move into each other. Like this one would have a different point, so this would do this and gracefully move into this. You're going to get overlapping like that in bottles. So you're going to get triangles, rectangles, circles. All those sorts of things are going to be found within a bottle. I've got a wine bottle here. This one, it would have been a little easier to draw. The neck looks pretty straight. Again, there's another ball that exists in it. The bottom is a rectangle. So you want to look at those things. If you're looking at a drinking glass, you could do the same. This one's actually got a curve in it in the middle of it. It's got a triangle on the bottom of it, like right from here to here. You got the angle. Here, there's an oval in it. So there's various shapes. Designers would use those shapes in order to draw this stuff. So anyways, we're working with this in here. Now, one way to come up with a decent circle that can help is I'm going to find my center in this. I'll make it just a little neater. So there's my center, of course. And when you come through this way, and now we've got that. So if I was to use these angles, some of you might have done this before in a geometry class. If you come across like that, if I take, here's a tangent point, as you know, here and here and here. However, if you want the circle accurate, midway of this point, about midway, they're never actually perfect when you actually measure them, but they're so incredibly close. So midway on those points will follow like this circle would be like a compass. If I go like that, swing it around, see it's going to hit that point. If I went like that, swing it around, it'll hit that point I made. And that would make a circle for you. So in product design, this is how they would do it. So I would find midway of this. And that's going to be real close to freehanding a decent circle. Now, I only need the top part of it. I don't need the whole thing. So is what I'm going to do is start here, and I'm going to bring around my curve like the feel of a compass, like that. It hit my point, pretty accurate there. And this one is going to come around like this. So it hit that point. So there's the curve of the shoulders of the object, okay? It's going to be in there like that. Because everything on a bottle is the symmetry of it to get it accurate. And so designers come up with a way to get this type of symmetry. This part of the bottle now just comes down. So I'm just going to darken the line all the way down. Something's going to happen here at the bottom that I'll show you. Now, the neck of a bottle, a lot of them, and I measured this one before we started this tape to figure it out, but most wine bottles, like beer bottles, this one just underneath the top of it, if I measured it, and I already measured it, and you measure it into the body of it, it goes in there as thirds. So that distance of the neck goes into this once, twice, and 3 times. It's exactly thirds from there when I look at it. So with a thirds measurement, and this one, on pretty much every wine bottle, this would be a third of its body. And designers will come up with that. This widens at the bottom, but it's a third there. So to come up with that, so I don't confuse you here, this is a way to come up with our thirds. And because hopefully some of you go after doing a bottle as one of your objects, so you can kind of get a sense for this. So in this top box, now I got rid of this line because we're dealing with the whole shape. So I'm coming up with where that is, and I'm going to come up with my center line, and I'm going to come up with this point, okay? So now we have that. And so our width to our height of the bottle is accurate because we did the notional space. Now is what we do is we take this point, and we're going to take it to here, like a pyramid. So we're going to take this. I should be using a yardstick, but I'm trying to move along quickly. So I'm doing this, and all of you should be following me. Otherwise, you're going to forget how this works. So that's going to do that. Where it crosses my X here, this is a third. So if I was to measure that width, that would be equal to this, as you can see, and that would be equal to that. So it's your very easy way of coming up with thirds. Again, product designers here at CCFs, whoops, they would have you doing this. I'll figure them out. Hold on, bear with me. I've got to get the charcoal set up in here. Be with you in 1 second. Whoops. Sorry about it, you guys. I keep doing the same thing with the charcoal. I'll get it this time. Sometimes the charcoal in this stick isn't wide enough, and I have to pull it. Let's see if this works. Okay, so anyways, that becomes our third measurement. I can do the same in reverse. I can go from the point there to here, like this. And where it crosses over my line of my X, that should work, okay? So now if I draw a vertical line in here, I'm going to place them. Okay, so that should be set up well. Now, I know this has an angle to it, so I'm not going to, I just want to make sure I've got them accurate. Okay, that looks pretty close. So I'm going to carry this up. And I'm going to run it all the way through temporarily. I know it looks like there's a lot of lines on there. So this is the thirds. Now remember, it was only at the top part was that width. Down here it's wider. So now is what you got to do is you got to sight these things like we did boxes. I got to hold this stick to the angle. I'm looking at it. For you, it's probably a little different. But I'm looking at it, and I'm trying to figure out where it touches on this bottle. Sometimes designers will take them all the way down from there. This one doesn't seem to quite do it. Well, of course, if I'm in the front of it, it's close. Sometimes it'll go down to this corner and come up to my thirds, which actually, when I look at it, looks quite accurate. And so you have to sight it, so you got to hold it up, figure out where it's going in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw that line from that corner of the bottle because it feels quite accurate. And it seems to come up when my line comes up from the side. It comes up beyond the top of the bottle. It would meet at a point at about here. So I'm going to draw that line in. This time I'm going to use a yardstick so that I can get it more accurate. So I'm going to do this with it. And I'm going to take this side and take it to the corner of my bottle, about right there. And I'm going to lay that line in. I'm going to make it pretty dark. And I'm going to come back to this one just to make it a little more accurate. I'm going to go to the corner and place that one in. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to clean up this just so that you can see it a little bit. So that's the width of our neck. So this neck is coming, and it hits there, hits here. This, where they meet, I'm going to make a horizontal line. I'm going to keep this a horizontal line where the curve meets, because eventually those are going to be ellipses. So this is coming up, and now we're going to take roughly where the top of our bottle is. I'm going to take it about like here, and I'm going to put the top part to it. So the top part extends. So you got to watch how it sticks out, and then we watch the angle on it. So there's an angle to it. It's not perfectly vertical. Sometimes we bring it up, and in this case, it's going higher than this one, where the two sticks would meet. So I'm gonna lay this out with the yardstick so you can see it more accurate. So it would go all the way as high as that to my center line. And so this one would meet at the center, because this is how you're going to get both sides symmetrical, right? So you got to do it with a sighting stick. And that's going to be like that. So we almost have this. I'm going to get rid of this stuff just so that you can see what's going on. So this is the width. This is the thickness of our neck of the bottle. And then we're going to angle this under just so slightly, because we got to watch the angle of it. And the top of this is going to be here. So there's our angles, and they're symmetrical. And then there's one other part to it, and this sticks out a little bit, and we'd have to watch its angle as well. And then that would go right to the top. And then there's an underplane to it. We watch the little underplane. You got to sight them. You got to get their angles. So basically, this is it with the bottle. The bottom has a slight tapering because of the thickness of the glass. I hold an edge to it, watch where it's tapered, and it goes this way, and it goes that way. The other way is to bring them down to a central line and do this with it, okay? And that's our bottle. If you place ellipses in, they would go into it from here. This would do this, and we place an ellipse in here. It would make it three-dimensional. And we place an ellipse at our cross sections, like here. So it feels like this is a cone. This is a cone sitting on top of a curve, right? It's a curve. This is a round part. So now this sits on top of that. This has a three-dimensional feel. And our bottom would do the same. There would be a curve to it. And the thickness of the glass, there'd be a curve to it. So there'd be an angle in there, and you'd have all the pieces. Now I've got to wrap this up in just a moment. One last thing I'm going to show you really, really fast, just in passing. If you could, so it might take me a moment. If you could, the shorthand of all of this is this. If I took a little lamp and I had a lamp shade, and I had a little neck to it, you know, where you would turn on the lamp, and I had a body to the lamp. I want to show you kind of a shorthand version. that can help you out. And if there's a bottom part of it like this, like a little stand. Okay, I'm trying to whip through this. So is what would happen is, with these planes, this is a tangent point, this is a tangent point. This is at our eye level or close to it, so the tangent point would be low. This would be narrow, as we talked about, close to our eye level. And then we make the ellipse. This one's a little lower than our eye level. Here's our minor axis line. I'm going to make these two a little wider than the top one. And this is a tangent point, tangent point. So feel out the curves. Strengthen them. The same with this. Wherever two planes meet, you have to have a ellipse. This is a little lower, so I'm going to place in the ellipse. So this can sit on that. The globe has to have a center and has to have a ellipse going through a cross section vertically as well as horizontally. So there's two ellipses. One's vertically, one's horizontally. The bottom would have an ellipse because it's sitting on there like this is sitting on there. There would be an ellipse, so there's a depth to it. And the bottom of this would have a pretty good width to it. So two tangent points, right? Planes. And that would be the strength of it. So then you'd have the three-dimensional lamp, okay? These lines, of course, in the back you would barely see. In your drawings, I'm going to have you leave them in there. Keep them light as you develop. And on that note, I'm going to have to leave it, and we'll see you guys soon.